Nobody expected what happened next. The air in the diner was thick with tension, and everyone felt it without knowing why. A waitress saw something no one else noticed at first. Keanu Reeves was standing there quiet, calm, but the way the police were speaking to him, something was off. They were too loud, too forceful, too unfair. And in that moment, she made a choice. She stepped forward. Her voice was steady, clear, cutting through the noise. "Sir, that's enough. He's done nothing wrong." The room went still. Every conversation paused. Eyes turned toward her. Keanu looked at her, surprised, but didn't move. The police froze for a second, unsure how to respond. Everyone in the diner felt it. The kind of tension that makes your stomach tighten, that makes your pulse race without warning. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And then she held her ground, unwavering. The moment stretched. You could feel the electricity, like the whole room was waiting for something impossible to happen. Could you be that person? Could you risk it all to speak up, even when the room is silent and the world seems against you? It was a busy evening at the downtown diner. The smell of fried food and coffee mixed with the faint scent of cleaning supplies. Plates clattered. Cups clinked. Laughter bounced off the walls, some of it loud, some of it nervous from the crowded room. The barista shouted an order. A waiter rushed past with a tray full of dishes. It felt normal, chaotic even. And then Keanu Reeves walked in. He didn't make a scene. No flashing camera, no fans screaming. Just quiet, calm. He took a seat near the corner, hoping for a peaceful meal. But the police noticed him almost immediately. Their tone changed the moment they approached. It wasn't a friendly greeting. It wasn't polite. It was sharp, questioning, demanding. People nearby stopped talking. Some glanced around, unsure if they should intervene. Others quietly pulled out their phones. Everyone felt the tension rising, even those who didn't know what had started it. Keanu stayed seated. He didn't argue. He didn't react. He just looked at the officers, calm, observing. And then she saw it, the waitress. She was moving between tables, taking orders, refilling drinks, but something in her changed. Her eyes locked on the scene. Her body shifted forward, just a little, as if preparing herself. She could feel the weight of every gaze on her, the collective tension of everyone watching. And she made a choice. She walked toward the situation, her steps steady, deliberate. Her voice rang out, clear and strong. "Sir, that's enough. He's done nothing wrong." Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Even the clatter of dishes seemed to fade. The officers paused, surprised, unsure of what to do next. Keanu looked up at her, eyes wide but calm. The waitress didn't flinch. She stood there holding her ground, her heart racing but her voice unwavering. People in the diner leaned forward, drawn in, feeling the courage and fear at the same time. Some whispered to the person next to them. Some gripped their phones, ready to record. The energy in the room changed. It wasn't just about one man or one officer anymore. Everyone felt it. The diner had shifted, even in those few seconds. You could see it in the way people were holding themselves, in the pause between breaths, in the way time seemed to stretch. The waitress didn't speak again right away. She waited. She let the tension hang there, letting everyone feel the weight of the moment. Every eye on her, on Keanu, on the officers. You could almost hear the room holding its breath. And in that silence, everyone knew something important was happening. Something bigger than them. Something that would change the way they remembered that night. Could you stand there like that? Could you speak when everyone is watching, when the stakes feel impossibly high? The comment came out of nowhere, sharp. Loud, completely out of line. It echoed across the diner. People froze. Conversation stopped mid-word. Even the sizzling in the kitchen seemed to fade. Keanu Reeves looked up slowly, calm, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of discomfort. The waitress noticed immediately. Her heart skipped a beat, but she didn't move away. She stayed rooted. She felt the eyes of everyone in the room on the exchange, the tension pressing in from all sides. The words were crude, unnecessary, disrespectful. They carried a weight that made the room heavy, a weight that no one else seemed ready to challenge. The police officer didn't lower his tone. He didn't apologize, he repeated it, louder this time, almost as if testing the limits, daring someone to speak. The waitress didn't flinch. She held her ground. Her hands were steady, her posture firm. She could feel her pulse in her neck, in her temples, but her voice stayed clear and controlled. "Sir, that's enough," she said, calm but firm. "He's done nothing wrong." The room went silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward her. Every phone camera lifted, some recording, some just capturing the moment instinctively. The diner's usual chaos had stopped. People leaned forward in their seats. Some whispered. Some swallowed hard. Even those standing near the counter seemed frozen in place. Keanu's expression didn't change much, but he gave a small nod, acknowledging her stand, a subtle gratitude that carried across the room. The officer blinked. A pause. Then the words came again, louder, sharper, more aggressive. The disrespect didn't soften. The words were meant to provoke, to test boundaries, to see who would crack first. The waitress didn't. She met his eyes, steady, unflinching. The tension thickened. You could almost feel it pressing down on everyone's shoulders, making each breath heavier, each second stretch longer. Patrons clutched their drinks a little tighter. A few leaned toward the edge of their seats. The servers paused mid-step. Even the cook behind the counter seemed to hesitate, spatula in hand. It was one of those moments where the world feels like it has stopped for everyone watching. The words were not just disrespectful, they were deliberate. Each syllable carried a challenge, an unspoken dare for someone to act. People glanced at one another. Should someone intervene? Was it safe? Could they say something? The weight of the moment made everyone feel small, powerless, and yet impossibly alert. The waitress stayed calm. She didn't move backward. Her hands rested lightly on the counter beside her, her voice even measured. She repeated herself, not louder, not with anger, but with clarity and authority. He's done nothing wrong. The officer hesitated, caught off guard by her certainty. The words seemed to hang in the air, filling the space between them, vibrating through the room. Patrons shifted in their seats, some leaning closer, drawn in by her courage. Some raised their phones a little higher, wanting to capture every second. The disrespect continued, but now it was clear that someone had drawn a line. Everyone felt it. The balance of power in the room had subtly shifted, and no one could ignore it. You could see the tension in the officer's jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the way he measured his next words. The waitress's calm refusal to back down amplified every eye in the room. Each person felt the pulse of courage in that space. Every breath seemed synchronized, every movement slowed, as if the diner itself had become a single organism holding its breath. Keanu remained seated, watching, silent, letting her handle it, trusting her control over the moment. And still the officer spoke again, repeating the insult, each word heavier, meant to intimidate, to provoke a reaction. But she didn't react with fear. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't retreat. She simply stood firm, her eyes steady, her voice clear, unwavering. A line drawn without aggression but with undeniable authority. The disrespect filled the room, thick and heavy, but it met a calm that could not be shaken. A control that made the room itself lean in closer, listening, watching, waiting. Every patron could feel the tension in their chest, the adrenaline rising, the sense that something impossible might happen at any second. The waitress held that moment. She let it stretch. Every pause, every hesitation, every unspoken threat hung in the air, and she met it with stillness, with resolve. People in the diner instinctively knew this wasn't about her. It wasn't about Keanu. It was about standing up, holding the line, being the calm in the storm. The words, the disrespect, the audacity of the officer, they pressed on, relentless. But she didn't give an inch. She became the anchor. You could see it in the tiny shifts of her shoulders, the way she breathed, the quiet force of her presence. And as the room held its collective breath, the full weight of the moment hit everyone at once. Courage doesn't shout. Courage stands. Even in the face of disrespect, even when the odds feel impossible. Even when everyone else is silent. Could you do the same? The air in the diner was thick, heavy, almost hard to breathe. Every movement seemed louder than usual. Plates clanked, glasses rattled, forks scraped against dishes, but somehow it all felt distant, muted, like the room had pulled itself into a single point of focus. The police officer stood a few feet from Keanu, his body tense, his eyes sharp, his voice measured but dangerous, each word loaded with challenge. The waitress stayed in place, unmoving, her stance calm but firm. She didn't lean forward or retreat. She didn't raise her voice or shake with fear. Her hands rested lightly at her sides, her chest steady, her gaze fixed. Keanu stayed seated, watching her, trusting her to carry the weight of the moment, his own body relaxed but alert, ready if needed. The tension in the room was palpable. Patrons leaned forward slightly in their seats, unconsciously drawn toward the standoff. Some gripped their drinks a little tighter, knuckles white, hearts racing. Others shifted in their chairs, trying to make themselves small, yet unable to look away. Phones appeared in hands, some raised to record, some just to witness. A soft murmur ran through the room like a pulse, low and cautious, a collective intake of breath. The waitress spoke again, her words calm, deliberate. Not loud, not angry, not demanding, simply firm. He's done nothing wrong. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly, his jaw tightening, measuring her. The room held its breath with him. Silence stretched longer than any normal pause could feel. Every tick of the clock seemed magnified. The sizzle of the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, the low hum of conversation all faded into background. Only the exchange mattered. Only the tension mattered. The waitress held it with grace, letting the weight of the moment press into every corner of the diner. Keanu's eyes followed her, the quiet acknowledgement of trust in every blink. The officer, frustrated by the calm defiance, repeated his challenge, his tone a little higher, sharper. It wasn't threatening in the way of violence yet. It was testing, probing, trying to push her to flinch, to break the calm. But she didn't. Her breath was even. Her shoulders relaxed. Her eyes locked onto his, steady, unwavering. Each second stretched, each heartbeat echoed. Patrons could feel it too. They leaned in, drawn toward the force of calm over aggression. The waitress became the center of gravity in the room, a still point in a storm that everyone felt but could not escape. Keanu's presence was quiet, but it added weight to her stance, a silent support that didn't diminish her own authority. The officer's body shifted slightly, subtle adjustments, micro movements as he recalculated, as he measured what to do next. The tension built, thick and almost physical. You could feel it pressing down on your chest, making your palms sweat, making your jaw tighten. The waitress didn't move an inch. She didn't blink away the eyes on her. She didn't look for escape. She simply stood calm, letting the room feel her control, letting the officer feel it, letting everyone else feel it. The seconds stretched longer and longer, each one a silent battle, a test of patience, control, and courage. Patrons leaned forward in their chairs, some barely breathing, as if the next sound might tip the balance. The hum of the fridge, the soft footfalls of servers, the distant ringing of a phone, all became part of the tension, amplifying it, making the silence even heavier. Keanu didn't move. He didn't intervene. He didn't signal or gesture. He trusted her presence. And the officer, growing more aware of the collective attention, more conscious of the weight in the room, hesitated. His words momentarily caught, his next move uncertain. The tension stretched like a taut rope, each person in the diner pulled toward it, feeling the pressure, feeling the gravity of standing versus yielding. The waitress exhaled slowly, subtly, but with purpose, her calm breathing a counterpoint to the sharpness of the officer's aggression. Each blink, each small movement, each slight shift in weight became magnified, noticed, felt. People shifted, leaned, whispered, gasped softly. Phones hovered, recording, capturing the quiet courage. Keanu's calm energy radiated into the space, reinforcing her own steady presence. The officer's frustration was visible in small micro-expressions, tightened lips, narrowed eyes, slight shifts of weight, but he didn't break the moment. He measured, he tested, he searched for a crack. But the waitress gave none. The tension built higher. It was the kind of pressure that makes every nerve in your body alert. Every person in the room could feel it. The weight of right versus power, courage versus fear, control versus aggression. The room itself seemed to pause, holding its breath, watching, waiting, feeling the stakes rise with every heartbeat. The waitress remained the anchor. She didn't shout. She didn't move. She didn't threaten. She simply existed in the moment, calm, steady, unbroken. And the diner, everyone in it could feel it. The tension was almost unbearable. It was sharp, electric, alive. Every second dragged and stretched, yet felt impossibly short. Every eye was fixed on her. Every ear tuned to the subtle changes in tone, every mind aware of the stakes. The officer's words, quiet but heavy, pressed against her. The patron's curiosity and fear pressed against her. Keanu's quiet presence pressed against her, and she stood still, unmoving, calm, unshakable. The tension didn't crack her. It built higher, more intense, until the entire diner was vibrating with it, holding its collective breath, waiting for what would happen next. Minutes passed that felt like hours. The tension in the diner didn't ease. It hovered in the air, thick and heavy, pressing against everyone. The officer's hand hovered near his belt, uncertain, his words faltering as he measured the room, measured the waitress, measured Keanu. He spoke again, a little louder, sharper, trying to regain control, trying to assert dominance, but the weight of the room pushed back. The waitress didn't move. She didn't hesitate. Her voice was calm, her tone steady, unshakable. "He's done nothing wrong," she repeated, each word deliberate, each syllable carrying a quiet power that seemed to vibrate through the diner. Keanu looked at her, his eyes calm, But there was a subtle nod, almost imperceptible, a sign of trust, a quiet acknowledgement that he felt the same tension, the same weight, and that he was letting her carry it. The officer's jaw tightened. He shifted slightly, a micro movement that everyone noticed, as if he was reconsidering his approach. Patrons leaned forward in their seats, breath caught, hearts racing. Phones were raised, recording, some hands shaking slightly, capturing the standoff, knowing this moment was unlike anything they had witnessed before. The waitress stayed rooted, her chest steady, her shoulders relaxed but firm. Every movement measured, every breath calm. The officer spoke again, words clipped, aggressive, meant to intimidate, but she didn't react with fear. She didn't flinch. She simply met his eyes, held the space, held the moment. Keanu's calm presence reinforced hers, radiating quiet strength, adding weight to her stance without diminishing her own authority. The diner felt suspended in time. Every sound, every movement, every blink of an eye was amplified. Conversations had stopped. Servers froze mid-step. The sizzle from the kitchen seemed distant, irrelevant. The room existed in a single pulse, all attention focused on the dynamic between the three of them. Patrons whispered to each other, soft breaths, low murmurs, anticipation curling through the room like a living thing. The officer's words began to falter, his volume lowering, his aggression muted by the weight of the collective gaze, by the unwavering calm of the waitress, by the quiet authority of Keanu's presence. The tension, which had been sharp and pressing, began to shift, subtle, almost imperceptible at first. The officer took a step back, not overtly, but enough for people to notice. A flicker of uncertainty passed across his face, tiny, human, visible. The waitress held her posture, her breathing steady, her eyes unwavering. Keanu's slight movements, the soft settling of his shoulders, the tilt of his head, reinforced her calm control. Every second stretched, elongated, each pause loaded with anticipation. Patrons leaned closer, some gripping their drinks, some holding their phones like shields, capturing the moment, some just watching frozen. The officer spoke again, quieter this time, almost as if testing himself, testing the room, testing the limits of what he could say, without losing authority entirely. The waitress didn't respond with anger, didn't escalate. Her calm was a mirror, a reflection of discipline, of control, of quiet power that filled the room more strongly than any raised voice could. Keanu's subtle nods, small gestures of acknowledgement, reinforced her presence without overshadowing it. The diner was entirely absorbed, suspended in the energy of this standoff, and every person inside felt it, felt the shift. The officer's posture changed subtly again, weight moving backward slightly, a pause in his tone, a hesitation in his words. It was the beginning of the turnaround. The dynamic had shifted. The air was still tense, still heavy, but the imbalance had moved. The authority had quietly, undeniably moved toward the waitress and Keanu. Patrons sensed it. The energy shifted in the room, almost imperceptibly at first, then more clearly. The officer's aggression was still present, but it was muted, restrained, contained. The standoff had changed. The room felt lighter in a way, as if the tension was being acknowledged and diffused slowly, carefully. The waitress didn't relax, didn't let her guard down, but the space around her seemed to shift in acknowledgement of her strength. Keanu's calm, steady presence amplified the effect, radiating reassurance into the room, reinforcing the subtle authority she carried. Every person watching felt the shift, felt the balance tipping, saw the change in the officer's eyes, in his stance, in his words. The tension, which had been almost unbearable, began to crack slightly, edges softening, but still holding enough weight to keep everyone on the edge of their seats. Patrons leaned in closer, some whispering softly, some exhaling quietly, some frozen mid-motion, unable to look away. The waitress remained composed, breathing steady, posture firm, eyes locked on the officer, holding the moment, holding the shift. Keanu's subtle movements, the calm energy he exuded, filled the space like a gentle but undeniable force, reinforcing her control over the room, over the moment, over the situation. The officer's lips pressed together, jaw tight, posture shifting again, tiny steps back, words slower, quieter. The tide had turned. The shift was clear. The balance of power, once heavy and threatening, was now leaning unmistakably toward quiet control, toward calm authority, toward the courage of a single person standing firmly in the face of challenge. The diner itself seemed to exhale slightly, as if the room, the chairs, the tables, the very air, acknowledged the moment, acknowledged the shift, acknowledged that something extraordinary had just occurred. Patrons leaned in, breathless, hearts pounding, phones raised, hands frozen. Every eye in the room was locked on the waitress, on Keanu, on the subtle cues that indicated the turnaround was complete. The officer spoke again, quieter, almost muttering, tone restrained, authority weakened, challenged without confrontation. The waitress didn't respond aggressively. She held her calm, her steady presence, allowing the room to sense the shift fully. Keanu's quiet support radiated outward, making the shift undeniable. Every person in the diner felt it. The energy had changed. The power dynamic had tilted. The moment had turned. And still the room was alive with tension, anticipation, and awe, every heartbeat synchronized with the slow, undeniable shift toward respect, toward control, toward quiet courage prevailing. The moment finally settled, but the energy in the diner didn't fade immediately. People slowly started to move again, but their movements were tentative, careful, as if the air still held the weight of what had just happened. Conversation started up again, soft at first, murmurs of disbelief and awe filling the space. Patrons exchanged glances, whispering to each other, replaying the moment in their minds, some shaking their heads in amazement. Phones were lowered slowly, but the recording stayed, hands frozen for a few extra seconds to capture the aftermath, the reactions, the quiet ripple of respect that had spread through the room. Keanu remained seated for a moment longer, calm, composed. But there was a subtle shift in his posture, a gentle exhale that carried relief, acknowledgement, and gratitude. The waitress stayed steady beside him, shoulders relaxed slightly, but her presence still commanding, a quiet force that everyone in the room could feel. The police officer had stepped back, his aggression muted, his stance no longer sharp, no longer challenging. There was a sense of understanding now, a recognition that this had been handled not with force, but with control. Patrons began to murmur their approval, some smiling softly, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding quietly at each other. The waitress's courage had set the tone, her calm authority had shifted the room, and the energy had changed entirely. Keanu finally spoke softly to her, a quiet thank you, the kind of acknowledgement that carried more weight than words could express. People around them caught the tone, the way his eyes held hers for a moment longer, the way his expression softened. There was no shouting, no drama, no overt display of power, just respect, genuine and undeniable. The atmosphere in the diner transformed completely. It wasn't chaotic anymore. It wasn't tense. It was charged with a sense of awe, admiration, and quiet triumph. Patrons began to whisper to one another about what had happened, replaying the courage, replaying the calm, replaying the control that had diffused the tension entirely. Servers returned to their duties, but there was a subtle shift in their movements, a sense that they had witnessed something rare and extraordinary. Every footstep, every clink of a plate, every soft murmur carried the echo of that moment, a reminder that control and calm could outweigh aggression and intimidation. Outside, some patrons began posting about it online immediately, capturing snippets, recounting what they had seen, the ripple effect starting even before the diner had emptied. By morning, the video clips, the stories, the reactions were everywhere. The waitress's stand, her unwavering calm, her courage had gone viral, spreading beyond the diner to social media feeds across the city and beyond. People shared it not for the drama, not for the confrontation, but for the example of strength under pressure, for the quiet authority that had diffused a potentially explosive situation. Keanu's subtle acknowledgement added credibility and weight, drawing more eyes to the story. The clip became a symbol of calm courage, of standing up when it mattered most, and the reactions poured in from people, inspired by the restraint and clarity of the moment. Comments flooded in, some praising her bravery, others marveling at Keanu's composure, but everyone agreed on one thing: the moment had left a mark. Patrons who had witnessed it in person recounted the experience again and again, each retelling reinforcing the power of self-control and courage over aggression. People shared the video in private messages, in groups and discussions about bravery, calm under pressure, and moral courage. The diner itself became a quiet landmark, a place where people had seen respect and courage meet in real time. Even the officers involved were quietly acknowledged by onlookers for stepping back, realizing the moment was bigger than their authority alone. The room had experienced something rare, a collective witnessing of courage that didn't need violence, didn't need shouting, didn't need chaos. And people were still talking about it hours later, days later, replaying it, showing it to friends, sharing it, marveling at how one person's calm courage could shift the entire energy of a room. Keanu's presence, quiet and composed, amplified it, showing how patience, respect, and calm authority could hold more power than aggression. Patrons replayed every second in their minds, trying to capture the weight, the timing, the way the calm had held against the challenge. And everywhere the story went, the engagement grew. People were inspired, debating what they would have done, asking themselves how they would react, sharing their opinions in comments, on posts and conversations, keeping the moment alive long after it had passed. Could you stay that calm in a moment like that? Could you be the person who stands steady while the world seems to press down on you? Could you hold control when everything around you? If you've ever wondered what real courage looks like, this is it. Not the kind of courage that shouts or fights or seeks attention. Real courage is quiet. It's steady. It's showing up when the world expects you to stay silent. The waitress didn't have to step forward. She could have stayed behind the counter, pretended not to see it, avoided the tension, avoided the risk. But she didn't. She stood up. She held her ground. She spoke truth calmly, clearly, with no hesitation. And in that act, she changed everything. Every person in the diner felt it. The energy shifted, eyes widened, breaths caught, funds rose, conversation stopped. Even Keanu Reeves, calm as ever, acknowledged the weight of what she had done with a simple nod, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. The room, once tense and uncertain, now held a quiet respect. Every person present knew they had witnessed something rare, something worth remembering, and that energy didn't stop when the moment passed. It spread, quietly at first, in whispers, in retelling and sharing what they had seen. Videos went online, clips were shared, stories were told, comments poured in praising her composure, marveling at her control, wondering how they would react in the same situation. People argued softly among themselves about what they might have done. Some said they would have confronted. Some said they would have stayed silent. And that's exactly what makes it powerful. It makes people stop. It makes people think. It makes them measure their own courage against hers. The story doesn't just live in the diner. It lives in every feed, in every conversation, in every reflection about what it means to stay calm under pressure. It spreads because it touches something deep in all of us, the desire to do the right thing, to stand up, to be brave without needing to be loud. And the question lingers long after the moment is gone. Could you do it? Could you stand there while the world watches, while the tension presses in, and hold your ground calmly, steadily, without flinching, without raising your voice, without seeking attention? Could you be the person who changes the energy in the room just by staying calm, just by holding the line, just by acting with quiet courage? It's easy to think of bravery as something loud, something dramatic, something that makes headlines. But moments like this show us otherwise. They show us that real courage can be quiet. It can be subtle. It can be enough to shift the balance of power without raising a hand. It can be enough to make an entire room, an entire group of people feel respect, admiration, awe. And that respect spreads, it multiplies, it inspires. People comment, they share, they tag friends. They debate, they reflect, they ask themselves what they would have done. And in every comment, every share, every story retold, the moment lives on. It grows. It teaches. It reminds us that standing firm, staying calm, speaking truth with control, it matters more than force. It matters more than shouting. It matters more than chaos. And now it's your turn to think about it. Could you hold your ground in a moment like that? Could you speak calmly when the world expects you to stay silent? Could you act with courage quietly, steadily, with no one else to back you up? If you believe you could, type Foyuraji. If you think it would be too hard, type honest. And tell someone you trust. Share this story with them. Let them see what real, quiet, steady courage looks like. Let them reflect. Let them feel it. Let them think about what they would do. Because this moment isn't just about the diner. It isn't just about the police, or Keanu, or the waitress. It's about all of us. About standing up when it matters. About control, about calm, about courage. About seeing a moment where the world expects fear, and showing strength instead. Could you be that person? Could you hold that line? Could you change the energy in the room just by being steady, just by being calm, just by being brave in silence? Type your answer. Share your thoughts. Tag someone who needs to see this. Let's see how far courage can spread.